Frostpunk is a tough-as-nails city builder. And with Frostpunk 2 on the horizon, I find it fitting to do a topical video for once. What draws many players like myself to Frostpunk is the visuals. Mainly the circular grid-based designs of the cities, and sitting in the center of these cities is a large glowing structure known as the generator. The player takes on the role of the captain, basically the mayor, as you lead your survivors of an apocalyptic natural disaster and help them scrape out an existence as the earth is freezing over. You'll encounter many trials and tribulations through your journey. That is, if you ever even see the end, before your subjects exile you for your failures. Since its release, Frostpunk has seen many expansions that increase the depth of the lore and introduce many new gameplay mechanics. So, put on your warmest jacket and grab whatever heat source you can, because we're about to step into minus 100 degrees Celsius temperatures and discover what Frostpunk has to offer. When you start your adventure, if you want to call it that, you're handed a group of exhausted survivors who are soon to be hungry, cold, and sick, unless you start ordering people around. The game rapidly introduces you to the basics. Survivors are grouped into a few different categories, primarily smarty pants and not so smarty pants, engineers and workers. See, every building requires staff to operate, and some buildings require specific staff. For example, the research building and medical stations can be employed solely by engineers, and engineers are usually in short supply, so it's important that you manage their employment carefully. And I truly mean to use the word manage, because Frostpunk treats your labor force like a resource. You'll find out very quickly that you either have so few workers that your colony is barely staying alive, as you have to spread them so thin, or your workforce is overflowing to the point where you do not have enough jobs for them all, and yet they tear through your food and coal at a blistering pace. That's not even mentioning all the wood and steel that you have to spend to house them. It's your job as captain to effectively manage these people, whether you have too many or not enough. I find the most efficient strategy is to constantly be moving people around, especially in some of the most difficult challenges and scenarios. Have too much steel? Then it makes no sense to have workers gathering steel if everyone is starving to death. Human asset allocation is going to be a skill the player must develop, and Frostpunk makes it difficult by not making your colonists robots that obey your every whim. Viewers who have played this game before might be curious as to why I'm bringing up the people first, when there's 100 other things in this game to talk about, like the generator, the tech tree, and even the law system. And we will get there. However, pretty much everything you do is in service to the people in your colony. It's important to acknowledge that, because these guys can be brats that make your life harder by stealing resources from you, killing each other, going on labor strikes, demanding things that you can't give them, and yet despite it all, the entire game revolves around keeping them alive and happy. Even the generator is useless without the people to keep warm. They're the lifeblood of Frostpunk and will constantly throw modifiers and gameplay changes at you. Real quick here, thank you to all the new subscribers and viewers who jumped in from my Halo video. If you're new here and like what you're seeing, go ahead and like and subscribe for more content. I briefly mentioned it a moment ago, but the colonists will often have quandaries and dilemmas that you are tasked to resolve. Examples include a father who found out his child is lost out in a blizzard and demands you allow him to leave to go search for her. Is it worth it for you to risk losing a worker at the most critical point in the game? Or what about one of your engineers wanting to commandeer an automaton in order to study it? Automatons are extremely powerful mid-game units. Is it worth the downtime to allow him to tinker with it for a few days? There's a ton of interacting with your colonists, every day bringing new challenges and squabbles you must deal with on top of, literally trying not to freeze to death. These interactions are presented by a wall of text and a pretty little picture you can look at to provide context. And on my first run of the game, I made sure to read every one of these. They're well written, and the pictures are well crafted. And I found myself getting emotionally charged at some of the stories that played out. I'd get angry when my workers would turn into crybabies, and I got so happy and relieved when that father mentioned earlier found his child out in the Frostlands in the middle of a blizzard that marks certain death for any human. The game rightfully calling it a miracle. I encourage players to take the first go around with this game slowly and read, because it makes subsequent playthroughs and the other scenarios way more impactful. Where this whole system of text blobs falls short is in the replaying of this game. When I started this video, I had basically already 100%ed this game. With each text blob, you are given a series of choices you can make, with the rewards and consequences clearly laid out in front of you. This makes it so someone who has already seen the major story beats before starts skipping reading the text altogether, instead honing in on the rewards and just picking the ones that make sense in the moment. The dilemmas and heavy emotional storytelling boil down to just looking at blue and red text and picking the lesser of the evils. This really kills any story impact and just pushes the colonists back into simple numbers on the screen, just another resource to be managed. I'm not sure how to fix this problem, but truth be told, I hope that Frostpunk 2 stays in the same boat that this game does. Because it walked a fine line between having just enough story and text to read while not being overly burdensome, or not having enough story or text and being a barren game relying solely on the gameplay mechanics to please the player. There are many ways to please and piss off your colonists, mainly done through the Book of Laws system. In short, the Book of Laws is a series of abilities / building / gameplay adjustments that you unlock through a timer. Usually you can unlock one every day or every other day, and these range from deciding how to deal with dead colonists, to should you employ the labor of a child? How about food? Do you want your people to eat normal rations? Or do you instead want to fill the gruel up with dirt and sawdust and make it last longer? Decisions like these might sound stupid at first, but each one has a fairly large impact on the actual moment-to-moment gameplay. A colony with an extreme labor shortage could very well see the light of another day by forcing the children into the mines. Is it really so wrong to force people to eat food mixed with sawdust if the only other alternative is starvation? Each option you pick usually locks you out of another, thereby kind of turning this game into a roguelike of sorts. The game almost demands a second playthrough of the main story, as halfway through the game, the Book of Laws expands, and the player is given two options to move forward, either uniting the colonists through faith or force. The reason these become an option is because of the main story forces you to deal with dissenters, called the Londoners. These are people with an overwhelming loss of hope who desire to return to London in search of warmth and safety. Every day, they will try to recruit more of your people to leave with them, while your job is to convert them back to your rulership and stay in the colony. There's a lot of key ways to deal with this problem, but first, you really need to decide if these people are friend or foe. Put yourself in their position. Like, really feel what it must be like to wake up in negative 40 degrees Celsius, eating sawdust, and pulling 24-hour shifts at the ball crushing factory, getting your balls crushed, and then returning home with frostbite to your tent where your child just got back from the mines, and knowing tomorrow you have to do it all over again. I'd want to leave too, dude. And the game tries to make these people seem like antagonists when I truly have sympathy for the Londoners. The problem is, if they leave, they're returning to nothing but their doom, as London no longer stands. And if they leave, you run a major risk of not having the workforce you need to survive yourself. So even as sympathetic as I feel, it's my job to get these folks to stay. I just wish the game gave you a bit more wiggle room on presenting yourself as trying to nurture lost sheep, and not beat them back into submission. Anyway, I went off on a weird tangent there, back to the Book of Laws. The game gives you two major avenues to deal with the Londoners, to unite them, through playing into human love of religion, or by increasing your authority and creating pseudo-police state to enact order. Selecting either one locks you out of the other, as well as changing the look of your colony, hence why I mentioned two playthroughs, one for religious zealousy and one for the martial law playthrough. Throughout the game, you've had to manage these two bars down here at the bottom. The red one representing your health and the blue one your mana. Oh wait, no, that's not right. The blue one representing hope of your subjects, while the red one represents discontent. Very ambiguous concepts, surprisingly reflected efficiently in a simple little bar format. If discontent rises too far, or hope falls too low, you're given one chance to make your people happy, or you're exiled. In a different scenario called The Last Autumn, hope is replaced with motivation, and it falling too low just means you're fired. Not so bad in comparison, but the failure remains the same. We're booted back to the menu and told to try again. As you make your way through the Book of Laws, you'll come upon the New Order, or New Faith laws you can sign. If you feel so inclined, you're welcome to ascend yourself to godhood in the eyes of your followers, or become an iron-fisted ruler with a supreme reign of fear and terror. Or don't. You don't really need these, and the game tries to sort of force them on you, and then paints you as the bad guy for signing them. I personally enjoy signing these super evil laws because the idea of reigning supreme over the hearts and minds of my lowly subjects has always been a goal of mine. So it's nice to live vicariously through Frostpunk. Joking aside, I'm very curious how Frostpunk 2 is going to build on either of these endings. Funny, I'm 11,000 characters into the script and I haven't even spoken about the heat system, the generator, and the actual building of the city. Maybe we should start doing that. But again, I really needed to talk about the actual people and Book of Laws because that's the backbone that decides the ebb and flow of the rest of the game. Frostpunk employs a man versus environment conflict for its narrative. I don't believe the other humans, such as the Londoners, are antagonists. Instead, just other victims inside of this hellscape. The real antagonist is the Earth and its intense cold. The story of Frostpunk loosely follows real-life history while never really outright telling you what happened. I mainly understand it as a combination of a volcanic eruption and a meteor, both of which blocked out the sun long enough to cause an ice age. Now it's up to the remaining human population to tap into their indomitable will to scratch out a living. Honestly, it almost seems impossible if not for your ability to lead. I kinda think you deserve the tyrannical cult leader title if I do say so myself, dealing with this kind of stress. Finally, after this whole video, I'm talking about the generator, a steampunk monolith that juts from the center of your colony. Genuinely, one of the last beacons of hope and warmth left on this planet. Your job is to race against the Earth freezing over by upgrading the power, range, and efficiency of the generator until the ice storm sends a wall of cold death your way. If you make it out the other side of the end of days, you win. In the other scenarios, the goals are different and the gameplay varies, but this is the central loop of the game. Gather resources and keep your workers in line while researching and building things until you win. Truth be told, it really is as simple as that. But actually accomplishing that goal can be a nightmare on your first couple runs as you fail to micromanage your workers, engineers, children, and automatons effectively, allow starvation to take hold, or more likely have a wave of cold freeze all of your subjects to death. This game is wide as a puddle, but deep as an ocean. There's so many systems all balancing together to make survival possible, and if even one of the cogs in the machine fail, the whole thing can come crashing down. A quick couple of tips that helped me get better at this game is make sure you're moving your labor force around. It doesn't make sense to have precious workers employed at a building that can't produce a resource or is producing a resource you don't need. Next tip is to never stop researching, and you can never have enough researchers. My best runs often have 4 or so fully employed research buildings, and making sure I have the resources ready to research again before this current one finishes, reducing any downtime. One last tip, if you have refugees or survivors coming to your city, try to have houses and empty medical beds for them before they get there, because if not, then you can expect them to flood your infirmary with frostbite, and all having to get amputated, making them useless burdens a day or two after they get there. The DLC for Frostpunk is pretty good. The Last Autumn is definitely the better item included in the Season Pass, as it tells a prequel story that ties in very well to the main game. The gameplay differences and adjustments are appreciated, as sometimes running the base game or endless mode can get a bit repetitive. I've always struggled to pay for games for full price, so naturally I'm going to tell you to wait till the DLC is on sale to buy it, but if you buy it full price, I still think there's enough unique gameplay to justify the purchase. I think the whole Season Pass thing is weird, and I'm not sure as to why a single player city builder needed to use that structure when a simple DLC would have done the trick. Again, it just feels weird, and now you can just purchase the Game of the Year edition that has everything included at the time of writing this for $17. There's definitely a ton of game to chew through for that price, and I suggest getting it and playing around if the sequel is sparking your interest. The sequel comes out July 25th, and it looks just as good as the original, so I'm definitely gonna get it. Thankfully it's coming to Game Pass, so maybe I'll give y'all an actual full-blown video game review on a modern game. That sounds like fun to me. Until then, I suggest y'all dive into Frostpunk and see the dark, gritty survival city builder for yourself. You'll find a game begging to be replayed, including difficult challenges and moral dilemmas and some tight resource management, all wrapped into a frosty steampunk setting. Despite the harsh situations you'll find yourself in, coming out the other side feels like an accomplishment well earned. I've been rope burned, Y'all like and subscribe and share with anyone who you think would like to be an early adopter of this channel with you. Y'all have a pleasant day.